Welcome back to AM Northwest. Companies across the country are making statements in support of racial equality, but that's just the first step. Now action is needed. Here to share 3 critical pieces of anti-racist work that she says can and should be done in the workplace, we welcome back career strategist and professional brand expert, Dr. Carol Parker Walsh. Carol, good to see you again. I've missed you. This is wonderful to see you.
It's good to see you.
This is an incredible topic, so something needs to be done, but how do you start to dismantle racism in the workplace?
Well, you have to take action. You really have to look at all of the policies and the structures that were really built along and on top of a very capitalistic, imperialist, supremacist kind of viewpoint, and really work to deconstruct those. You know, there was a story I used to love to tell when I did a lot of diversity training by Roosevelt Thomas that talked about a house that a giraffe built, but wanted to inviting so many other people in. And nobody can fit in a house that's built by a giraffe. Only another giraffe can.
Right.
So it's really looking at the fact that structures and policies and systems were put in place that aren't going to support anyone else to rise to any levels of true success, to true economic or political, power or clout. So you really have to dismantle, really examine all of the systems and to see really who is benefiting from them and who is not benefiting from them, and then start to really change them. I mean, the conversation is a great starting point, but another person I love, Jane Elliott, who does a lot of diversity work, asked the question when she does her work to a white audience that says, how many of you would want to change places with someone who's Black and live their life? And invariably, nobody raises their hand.
Right.
And so what she says is that that what's happening is real and you don't want it for yourself. So why do you allow it to happen for other people?
Right.
And so I think why the conversations to me are delayed, sometimes in a lot of ways delay tactics to do the hard work, because talking about it and talking about it and talking about it doesn't change anything. We have to move into action. We
have to talk about access. Access is very important.
100%. The first thing is giving people access to networks, to connections. One of the things about our huge wealth gap that we have between whites and Blacks in America, it's 13 times higher for whites than it is for Blacks. And so that means there's access to individuals, to organizations, to upper level and higher level people who have the power and influence to maybe make an impact and influence. So you have to be able to expand your network and open the door to give people access to be able to have the opportunity to step into the same level of privilege and power that our white counterparts have all the time.
And advocacy is very important.
Advocacy is huge. And for me, advocacy is a 2-step process. The first thing is that it requires education. And what I mean by education is not to ask other Blacks, tell me about your experience.
Yeah.
It's about how do you educate yourself on white supremacy and racist, sentiment and policies that have really permeated our country. So at first it requires education, then it requires you to actually open your mouth and advocate for people. Who are you inviting on your stages? Who are you recommending for jobs? Who are you looking around and saying, how can I actually speak on behalf of individuals in my organization, people of color and Blacks, to say, this person needs an opportunity. This person should have, more availability to be able to come into the role or take higher roles. I love what Serena's husband did, the founder of Reddit. I love that he actually stepped out of his role as on the board to make room for someone of color, someone Black, to actually step into that role. That's what advocacy and access looks like, is that you're creating a space for people to actually step into those voids that we are not in and we don't see. We talk about all the time being one of a few or the only one in the upper echelon of a lot of organizations, because as we rise to the top, we see fewer and fewer of us. So there has to be education, which he admittedly has been doing, and then the advocacy, which is taking a step back to allow space for other people to step in.
And lastly, activism.
Yeah, and that's a bold word for a corporate workspace to think about. Advocacy, right? Is activism. But activism comes in 3 ways. It's looking at your policies, it's looking at your pay structure, and it's looking at your promotional plans and availability for people to actually rise into those upper levels. And so what you first have to do is to think about, how do I change the rules? How do I change my hiring policies? How do I change the ability for people to step into leadership roles? How do I create training and access and other things to allow people to actually step into those places. And then look at the pay gap. I mean, we've talked about gender pay gaps forever, but it's also definitely pay gaps when it comes to people of color. So dismantle your compensation structures, look at them, change them, and bring equity. That is something that actually can be done to be able to spread the wealth so you're not just benefiting one or the other. And then promote. Bring people. I love these statements. I've seen a few where they're talking about they're looking at their leadership level and to ask what's missing and to create space to bring people into those higher levels. So it takes access, it takes advocacy, which is part of that educational process, and true activism, all verbs, not dialogue, not conversation, because as I said, is the question Jane asked, if you would change the place, would you? So you already know it's there. Dialogue's not needed. It's time for action and advocacy.
I've got to ask you a personal question, because I know you on Facebook. I see your friends. It must be, Facebook friends, it must be a tightrope for you to walk on when you have some clients, Facebook friends, who are white, who don't see racism. They blame George Floyd for his death. That kind of thing must really hurt from people that you know and work with.
Yeah, it definitely hurts. It hurts quite a bit because it's to me is showing that they're not even entertaining or doing the work to see what this really is about and are just blanketly, denying everything. And I have defriended, or unfriended quite a few people because of it, because I won't engage with it. I think right now, for and the only way I can describe it is that racism is like a horrible wound that is never healed. And the way I've been feeling of late is like the Band-Aid has been ripped off and now I'm bleeding profusely and I can't stop it. The fear that I have for my children, the fear that I have for myself, the pain and degradation that I felt over the years, it's been, I've had good days, I've had bad days. It's been really hard for me. And so when I see people who are in positions of privilege not even allow themselves to try to understand my experience, it is really hurtful. But I tell you right now, in the past, what we have done as Black people is put the Band-Aid on to prevent white fragility from seeing the wound and seeing the blood that's coming out of us. And right now we're in a space where I'm not going to hide my blood anymore. I'm not going to hide the pain. I'm not going to hide the wound. I want you to be able to see it so that we can actually move to change. At least that's how I feel about it. So there's ways to engage in activism work and anti-racist work in your workplace, in your community, and even in your homes. And it starts with just opening your mind to listening. You don't have to understand my experience to validate it as true, right? And so that's the challenge that is really hard for me when I see people who just don't get it and don't want to get it. And it's broken my heart. And I've seen some revelations of people who I thought were truly my friends. And I realized that they can't be if they can't see the struggle that I'm going through.
Carol, thank you so much. And thank you for being honest about it. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well.